Good day. My name is Symbolic Learning, and today I want to talk about the brain, the connection between the brain and learning. As I said, I was going to talk about it before we go into strategies to maximize learning opportunities. There is a reason that these strategies work for the brain. There is a reason that the brain makes connection through these strategies for effective learning to take place. And according to research by Wolf in 2001 and Tillerstein in 2011, we know, all right, that the brain is there for your survival. First and foremost, the brain gets a lot of sensory stimuli and all of those things, but it needs you to survive. So it can't not just expose you to everything and make you respond to everything. We will shut down. Okay, so what the brain does is to try to filter out as many as 99% of the information coming in and just pays attention to 1%. Now think about it. That's huge for the work that we do. How do we determine that what I'm teaching a child will fall under that 1%, of what the brain is going to pay attention to? We know how, because we know two things that make the brain respond to things. The first is that if the information you're sharing has meaning, and the second is if the information can evoke emotional response. Now, that way, the brain will pay attention to it. So the first thing I will talk about is if the information has meaning. How does the brain create meaning from what you've learned? Or from what you try to expose the brain. So think about Christmas lights. You know how you put when you plug it, and then it's electrical impulses. You don't see, but then you realize electrical impulses is going from one bulb to another bulb, and it's because one bulb can't make connection with the last bulb because there's meaning in the impulse that's going in. I mean, that's a simple analogy, but I just hope you get my point. So what the brain does is the brain also learns through these neural connections. Okay, it's building on one experience to another one and then trying to make sense or find out meaning for what is learned. So there are three ways that the brain does this. The brain does this through concrete experiences, symbolic learning, and abstract learning. We know that the brain first makes the strongest connection through concrete experiences. So you have to think about concrete experiences all the time. So I'll try and give an example. For instance, I was at a place in Lagos where we went to see some animals and all that, and I saw this vertebrae of a baby whale, a cervical vertebrae, and I was like, wow, this is huge. This is a baby whale? This is just a cervical vertebrae? I mean, like, that's huge. So that's a concrete experience for me. I could touch, I could feel, and everything. I also saw a turtle as well, so I could touch, I could feel, I could, even smell the, just smell the whole thing. It was fun. Okay, but the next thing I did with the people that were with me, for instance, were then to say, let's go into symbolic learning. So then I try to bring out my phone and show them the pictures of whales, pictures of baby whales, pictures of more cervical vertebrae, other forms of vertebrae as well, for them to then make connections. So what I have done is to help the brain to create some meaning. Okay, so they're building from the concrete to the symbolic. They're building from what they have seen, touched, heard, and felt to what they're now reading or seeing in the picture. So that's the symbolic learning on the concrete experience. Now remember, like we talked about before, learning can come from acquisition of new knowledge. Like that could have been the case during that concrete experience for these people. And then we'll go on into modification of knowledge that could have been from the symbolic experience, okay, by building on what they've learned before. But this is, creating meaning for them. And then we go into abstract learning where we can then begin to connect. Okay, what other animals then do you think would have this form of vertebrae? Do you think you have it? Okay, things like that. So that's how they can generalize the things that they have learned. That's how the brain makes meaning, and that's how it can make connections to what you've taught them. Okay, from concrete to symbolic and then to abstract. All right. And then the next thing, of course, is if the information can evoke emotional response. Think about learning as a process, like I talked about. You have to think about what emotion are you trying to evoke in these people that you're working with, because if you evoke the appropriate emotion, learning is likely to stick because they would associate what you've taught them to the appropriate emotion, to that joy, that vibrancy that you've given them during learning. When a child comes in contact with you in class and all you have is a very gloomy face or you're frowning and they're like, This day is bad already. So think of learning as a process, because if you evoke the appropriate emotion, learning is likely to take place. That's why all your strategies would try to evoke positive emotion, because even negative emotion has its own impact on learning. Fear, if your child is learning through fear, or sometimes just being threatening to the child. Now, learning, or let me say enduring learning, cannot take place. You may force a child to learn one or two things out of fear or by threatening them, but that thing may not be enduring. It may not be something they can repeat over and over again in the future, because you've evoked negative emotion. It's just not going to last long. So you have to think about this thing when you are working with children. Sometimes you don't intentionally do it, sometimes you do. But many times maybe you don't, but you have to know, is my strategy evoking negative emotion? Is my strategy even evoking any form of reasonable positive emotion that can drive learning? Because you have to remember, emotion drives attention, and attention drives learning. So this is important. This is the basic reason why the strategies we are going to be learning work. And they do work because the strategies ensure that the information we pass to the children we work with has meaning, because we're connecting concrete, symbolic, and abstract. And secondly, because the information we are passing across to our children evoke the appropriate emotional response. All right, so thank you. In my next video, I am going to then be talking about some of these strategies. I know that you will love it. So I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.